June 4th vigil without student groups taking part.
And I'm going to show everybody out there watching this show and the whole world, and the world will bow and admit that I am the greatest of all times.
The passing of boxing legend Muhammad Ali.
Through a principled security network, we can all meet the challenges we're facing together.
And the U.S. Defense Chief proposes Asia-Pacific Security Network.
Good evening. With the June 4th candlelight vigil about to get underway at Victoria Park, the big question this year is, would the absence of student groups affect overall turnout? And what does the future hold for activities here in Hong Kong, marking the 1989 Tiananmen Square crackdown? Rani Samtani joins us now from Victoria Park. Rani, what's the view over there?
Hi, Diane. So crowds of people have been gathering here since as early as 4 p.m. During the vigil tonight, participants will be singing songs and chanting slogans, and organizers will make speeches about democracy movements both here in Hong Kong and in China. And I've also been told a witness of the June 4th incident will be coming to speak about his experience and what he saw on that day. Now, even though student groups have said they will not be taking part in today's events, organizers believe that Hong Kong has always paid a lot of importance to the June 4th events, and so they expect a huge turnout will come tonight. Since 1989, Hong Kong has been the torchbearer in marking the Tiananmen Square crackdown. Over the years, local residents, politicians, activists, and student leaders gathered for the annual candlelight vigil at Victoria Park. But this year, things are a little different. Amid a growing divide between pro-democracy groups, the Hong Kong Federation of Students announced earlier that it will not take part. The Hong Kong Alliance in support of patriotic democratic movements of China, which organizes the annual vigil, has called for unity.
I welcome that there are other people doing their own way in commemorating June 4th, but I think to unite together is very important tonight in this Victoria Park, to have the most powerful message to the Beijing government that we Hong Kong people have not forgotten, and we demand for vindication and demand for end of one-party rule.
But student leaders said they no longer want to participate because they believe the fight should focus on democracy in Hong Kong, not on the mainland. University student unions are holding alternative June 4th events this evening. These include seminars and forums on the SAR's future political development. In addition, political group Civic Passion is holding rallies at a number of locations across the territory to commemorate June 4th. The rift that has developed among pro-democracy groups on the way forward is raising questions on whether the yearly commemorations should continue. Is the Tiananmen Square crackdown worth remembering?
I think any publicity is good in keeping people remembering this thing and encouraging people to see if there are solutions.
I just think it's significant to remember the people who died on June 4th and for Hong Kong to be able to speak out about the overall political situation in China.
Now, in the past, the Hong Kong Federation of Students would take part in key ceremonies this evening, including laying flowers to commemorate those who died and the lighting of the torch. This time round, the Alliance will be doing this all on their own, along with several members that they've invited, such as youth representatives from different political parties. The observatory has predicted there will be a few showers tonight. Luckily, it hasn't been raining over the last few hours. But I have noticed that many participants have come prepared to bring, they've brought mats to sit on, and they've got umbrellas and raincoats just in case it rains again. The vigil is about to start at 8 p.m. and it will close at around 10 p.m. Police have made several kinds of arrangements in case the crowds are too big. There are 6 football pitches that they will be filling here at Victoria Park, and once it gets full, they will fill another green pitch which is just nearby. Now that's all from me. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Rani. That was Rani Samtani reporting live from Victoria Park. Now, in Beijing, authorities took what's seen as a relatively low-profile approach towards security on the anniversary of the 1989 crackdown. Early this morning at Tiananmen Square, members of the public and journalists attending a flag-raising ceremony went through security checks without the extra procedures that had been in place in the past few years. However, some foreign journalists were refused entry. The Wan'an cemetery, where some of those who died in the crackdown are buried, was closed to the public today. Security was tight there. Authorities escorted some of the families of the deceased to the graves this morning. One mother, Jiang Xianling, tells TVB News authorities used private vehicles instead of police cars to draw less attention. She also believes it's time Beijing starts trying to resolve the issue, noting even South African democracy icon Nelson Mandela was released from prison after 27 years.
In other news, Under Secretary for Food and Health, Sophia Chan says there is a need for better public education on beauty procedures. She also reminds people to turn to registered medical staff if they want to get them done. 4 local women have developed botulism after receiving Botox injections across the border. Winna Wong has more.
The latest victim of a suspected botched Botox procedure had her injections done here at Luohu Commercial City. She complained of dizziness and numbness in the face several days after the procedure and currently remains hospitalized at Caritas Medical Center. She's the 4th woman in recent months to be diagnosed with botulism after getting Botox injections from the mainland. This woman just got her nails done at the same shopping center. I think nails are fine, but I would never get injections here. This is the mainland after all, she says. Here in Hong Kong, Undersecretary for Food and Health Sophia Chan said the Department of Health maintains close contact with mainland authorities. She reminds people to be extra careful when undergoing beauty procedures. The Hong Kong Doctors Union and the Association of Doctors in Aesthetic Medicine also spoke about the matter today. The Doctors Union said a Botox procedure on the mainland generally costs a few $100s. But in Hong Kong, a vial of Botox costs about $2,000. The union suspects the problem may come from sourcing. President Henry Young also suspects the beauticians who carried out the procedure were not registered or professionally trained. The Association of Doctors in Aesthetic Medicine added that one of the 4 local women who developed botulism might have been given 6 times the amount of toxins needed, which led to complications. Winna Wong, TVB News.
Boxing legend Muhammad Ali has died at the age of 74. The former 3-time world heavyweight champion was admitted to hospital this week, suffering from a respiratory problem. Jameson Wong takes a look back at the fighter who was once the most famous person on the planet.
There were the lightning-fast hands, the larger-than-life persona, and the taunts. Oh, those legendary taunts.
I predict that when I meet Joe Frazier, this will be like a good amateur fighting a real professional. This will be like a kid out of the Olympics meeting the fastest heavyweight champion that ever lived.
Is it any wonder many consider him the greatest? Born Cassius Clay in Louisville, Kentucky, he did it all in the ring. Ali won Olympic gold in 1960 before beating Sonny Liston to capture his first world title 4 years later. His legacy includes bringing boxing to the world. He fought in a dozen different countries, including the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Japan. In the 70s, he faced arch-rival Joe Frazier 3 times, winning twice, including the Thrilla in Manila. And perhaps his sweetest victory came in his upset of George Foreman in the Rumble in the Jungle in Zaire. Given no chance against the hard-punching Foreman, Ali used a tactic known as rope-a-dope. In the 8th round, he knocked out and exhausted Foreman. There were great battles outside the ring, too. In 1967, he refused to be drafted by the military due to his opposition to the U.S. war in Vietnam. That decision would eventually cost him his world title, his boxing license, and 4 years of his boxing career. He retired from the sport in 1981 and became a champion of numerous humanitarian causes. And despite suffering from Parkinson's disease, he continued to inspire others and was honored with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award in his country.
And I'm going to show everybody out there watching the show and the whole world, and the world will bow and admit that I am the greatest of all times.
Muhammad Ali!
Jameson Wong, TVB News.
The United States has stepped up pressure on China to rein in its activities in the South China Sea. At an international security conference in Singapore, top defense officials stressed the U.S. will ensure Asian security in the region for decades to come. The warning got a cool reaction from the Chinese delegation. At this year's Shangri-La Dialogue, the U.S. Defense Secretary singled out China's growing assertiveness as the main contributing factor in growing regional anxiety in the disputed South China Sea.
China's actions in the South China Sea are isolating it at a time when the entire region is coming together and networking. Unfortunately, if these actions continue, China could end up erecting a great wall of self-isolation.
The South China Sea has become a flashpoint between the U.S. and China as Washington increases its focus with an Asia-Pacific pivot. Beijing, meanwhile, is projecting greater economic, political, and military power in the region. Carter said the U.S. has no intention of withdrawing from the Asia-Pacific and may even expand its military presence in the region. But he also offered closer U.S. cooperation with Beijing in a proposal to strengthen defense ties.
The United States welcomes the emergence of a peaceful, stable, and prosperous China that plays a responsible role in the region's principal security network.
The proposal was met with skepticism from China's representative at the forum. Rear Admiral Guan Youfei said Beijing welcomes closer U.S. relations with Asian countries, but he urged Washington to scale back its military exercises in the region and reduce military provocations. Japan's defense minister, meanwhile, said Tokyo will help Southeast Asian nations build their security to counter dangerous and coercive activities that challenge the principles of international law. China continues to shore up vast territorial claims in the resource-rich region by building artificial islands. Tokyo is worried that Chinese control of the waterways through which trillions of dollars in global trade passes each year would threaten Japan's national security. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says his government has expressed its dissatisfaction with China after Foreign Minister Wang Yi berated a Canadian journalist this week. Wang slammed the reporter for raising questions about China's human rights record at a news conference during his visit to Ottawa. Trudeau said his government and the web outlet that the journalist works for have expressed their dissatisfaction to both Wang and the Chinese ambassador to Canada. A Canadian leader said freedom of the press is extremely important to me. He also stressed the media's job is to ask tough questions.
And still to come in our news tonight. Water levels of River Seine peak before receding. Locally, fresh questions raised about functional constituencies in Lechco election. And kids find out which primary school they'll attend.